It is 2012. You open Facebook the way you do every morning between coffee and whatever comes next. You scroll, you read, you absorb. Some posts make you smile. Some make you feel vaguely unsettled. Some leave you with a low gray feeling you cannot quite name. You assume this is simply the mood of the internet today, the accumulated emotional weather of your social world arriving through your screen. You are wrong. This week, your newsfeed has been deliberately altered, not by the algorithm doing what algorithms do, but by a research team that has specifically selected which posts you see, filtering out certain emotional content and amplifying other content to push your emotional state in a particular direction. You are not using Facebook this week. You are participating in a psychological experiment. And nobody asked you. You are one of 689,000 people this is happening to. Not one of you has been told, "Welcome back to the darkest experiments." We have spent Chapter 7 inside the psychology of observation and deception, watching Laud Humphreys track men to their front doors through their license plates, watching Elizabeth Loftus plant memories in minds that believed they were simply remembering. We have been sitting with the question of what it means to study people without their knowledge and what obligations researchers carry toward the people they observe. Now we arrive at the final experiment of Chapter 7, and it is the one that most directly belongs to the world you are living in right now. Not a 1960s restroom, not a 1990s psychology laboratory. A platform that, in 2012, had over 1 billion users and was becoming the primary lens through which hundreds of millions of people understood their social world. The Facebook Emotional Contagion study is not ancient history. It is last week. It is the architecture of every platform you use today. And it asks, with urgent and unanswered force, a question that the digital age cannot afford to ignore. The year is 2012. Facebook is 9 years old and has become something unprecedented in human history. A single platform through which nearly 1/7 of the world's population is sharing their emotional lives, their relationships, their opinions, their grief, and their joy. The research team at Facebook's core data science team, led by data scientist Adam Kramer, working in collaboration with researchers from Cornell University and the University of California, San Francisco, has a question rooted in a well-established psychological concept: emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is the tendency for people to unconsciously absorb and mirror the emotional states of those around them. It is the reason you feel lighter after spending time with someone joyful, and heavier after spending time with someone in despair. It has been documented in face-to-face interactions, in phone conversations, in written correspondence. But what about social media? Can emotional states spread through a digital network transmitted not through voice or facial expression or physical presence, but through the carefully curated text of status updates and shared posts? To find out, Kramer and his colleagues did something that social scientists operating under standard ethical guidelines could not have done. They manipulated the news feeds of 689,003 Facebook users without their knowledge, without their consent, and without any review by an independent ethics board. For 1 week in January 2012, nearly 700,000 Facebook users were divided into experimental groups. Some users had the positive emotional content in their feeds reduced, fewer happy posts, fewer expressions of joy and gratitude. Others had the negative emotional content reduced, fewer sad posts, fewer expressions of grief and frustration. Control groups received their feeds unaltered. The researchers then analyzed the subsequent posts made by each group, looking for shifts in emotional tone. The findings confirmed the hypothesis. Users who had been shown more negative content in their feeds subsequently posted more negatively themselves. Users shown more positive content posted more positively. The emotional tone of what people consumed on the platform influenced the emotional tone of what they produced on it. Emotions were spreading through the network, not through conversation or direct interaction, but through the passive absorption of algorithmically curated content. The study was published in June 2014 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It was, as a piece of research, significant and methodologically sound. Emotional contagion in digital networks is a real phenomenon. Understanding it has genuine implications for public mental health, for the design of online environments, and for the responsibility of platforms toward their users' well-being. And then the world found out how the data had been collected, and the reaction was not congratulations. The public and media response to the revelation of the study was immediate and furious, not because the finding was disturbing, though it was, but because of what had been done to produce it. 689,000 people had been used as unwitting subjects in a psychological experiment. Their emotional states had been deliberately manipulated by a corporation for the purposes of research, without their knowledge, without their consent, and with the potential to cause genuine psychological harm. A person shown a feed of relentless negativity for a week does not experience that as a neutral event. Depression, anxiety, irritability, these are not trivial outcomes to impose on a person without their agreement. Facebook's defense rested on its terms of service. Users had, upon creating their accounts, agreed to a document that included language permitting their data to be used for research and service improvement purposes. Therefore, Facebook argued consent had been obtained. The response from ethicists, researchers, and the public was unambiguous. That is not consent. A terms of service document written in legal language, accessed during account creation, and agreed to by clicking a button is not informed consent for participation in a psychological experiment designed to manipulate your emotional state. No institutional review board applying standard research ethics guidelines would have accepted it as such. The deeper issue was the one that Loftus's study had already hinted at, and that Humphreys's study had raised in a different form. What does consent mean in an age where the observation, recording, and manipulation of human behavior has become the operational model of the most powerful institutions in the world? What makes the Facebook study different from every other experiment in this series is scale. Milgram studied 40 participants at a time. Rosenhan studied 8 pseudopatients. Even MKUltra, vast and secretive as it was, affected thousands rather than hundreds of thousands. Facebook reached 689,000 people in a single week. With the infrastructure of a modern platform, the same experiment could be run on tens of millions tomorrow. And unlike Milgram's laboratory or Loftus's booklet of memories, there is no debrief. There is no moment at which the participant is told what was done to them, given an explanation, and given the opportunity to process the experience. The manipulation simply ends. The feed returns to normal, and the 689,000 people who were subjects in a psychological experiment go about their day without ever knowing. The Facebook study is therefore not just a story about one corporation crossing an ethical line in 2012. It is a story about the structural relationship between technology platforms and their users, a relationship in which the platform holds total power over what the user sees, feels, and ultimately thinks, and in which the user has no meaningful ability to observe, resist, or consent to that power. Every major social media platform operates on a version of this model. The specific experiment Facebook ran in 2012 was unusual only in that it was documented and published. The underlying capacity to alter the emotional environment of hundreds of millions of people simultaneously, without their knowledge, is a permanent and growing feature of the digital landscape we all inhabit. In the aftermath of the controversy, Adam Kramer published a statement on Facebook expressing regret that the study had caused concern, notably not regret for the study itself, but for the fact that it had generated negative attention. Facebook did not apologize. The company did announce revisions to its internal research review processes. Whether those revisions have produced meaningful change in how the platform uses its users' emotional data is not publicly known. The study was not retracted. It remains in the scientific literature. The journal that published it added an editorial note expressing concern about the ethical review process, a note that is itself a remarkable admission, given that the journal had published the study in the first place. The Facebook Emotional Contagion study is an invitation to think carefully about the environment you move through every day, not the physical environment of streets and buildings, but the information environment of feeds, timelines, notifications, and algorithmically curated content that now constitutes a significant proportion of the emotional texture of most people's daily lives. That environment is not neutral. It has never been neutral. It is designed, optimized, and continuously adjusted, not primarily to inform or connect you, but to hold your attention. And the emotions most effective at holding attention are not calm, contentment, or quiet satisfaction. They are outrage, anxiety, envy, and fear. These are the emotions that keep you scrolling. And the platforms know this with a precision that would have made Pavlov envious. Understanding this does not require you to delete your accounts or retreat from the digital world. But it does ask something of you. It asks you to notice, actively, regularly, and with genuine curiosity, how you feel before you open a feed and how you feel after. To treat your emotional state not as something that simply happens to you, but as something that is being actively shaped by systems whose interests are not the same as yours. Emotional contagion is real. It spreads through networks the way weather moves through a landscape. But unlike weather, the emotional climate of your digital environment is curated. Someone decided what you would see today. Knowing that is not cause for paranoia. It is the beginning of agency. In January 2012, Facebook ran an experiment on 689,000 people without their knowledge. In June 2014, the world found out, and the conversation that followed about consent, about platform power, about the ethical responsibilities of corporations toward the people who use their products, is a conversation that has not ended and must not end until the answers are better than the ones we currently have. That closes Chapter 7. We have moved from a public restroom in the 1960s to a shopping mall memory that never existed, to a social media feed manipulated in real time. The thread connecting them is the same in every case. The question of who has the right to observe, deceive, and manipulate another human being without their knowledge. And the answer every time is the same. Nobody. Not without consent. Not for any reason that places the value of the data above the dignity of the person. Next time we begin with Harry Harlow and a device he called the Pit of Despair, a stainless steel chamber into which infant monkeys were placed in total isolation, and from which they emerged with damage so profound that it gave psychology its most complete model of severe depression. It is waiting for you in the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave a comment. In a world of algorithmic manipulation, how much do you think about who is shaping what you feel? I want to hear your answer. And thank you genuinely and deeply for being here throughout this entire series.